Days after learning that my ex-husband had cheated on me, I had that dreaded doctor's appointment to check for STIs. And I remember laying there on the table, feeling humiliated, but even more than that, feeling so powerless. And that's how being cheated on makes us feel, doesn't it? After all, this person was making so many decisions that impacted our lives, and we didn't even know that it was happening. And then even once the affair has come to light, we don't have any control. We have no choice over if they decide to continue the affair or if they want to put in the work to try to heal the relationship. And so much of our pain comes from that feeling of powerlessness. It's like when you're in strong ocean waves and they're just beating you down and you don't know what's coming next. And all you can do is struggle to try to keep your head above water. Now, learning about the affair is completely gutting. Your world that you thought you knew is gone. And I know right now you're feeling scared, you're feeling isolated, you're feeling unmoored, is my favorite word to use about it. But there's also a benefit to finding out because now that you know, now you can start to take back your power. So, the first way that you can start to find your agency is to set boundaries. You didn't have any choice in what they were doing to you before when you didn't know. But now that you know, you can make decisions on what you are willing to tolerate. So again, you cannot keep them from cheating. You cannot force them to put in the work to heal the relationship. But what you can do is tell them, I will allow this and no more. Now, setting those boundaries can be hard because you want things to be the way that they were. And in order to set and enforce those boundaries, you first have to accept that there is no going back to before. And just setting those boundaries is going to give you a sense of safety, a sense of security, and it's going to make you feel yet again like you have just at least a little bit of say in what your life is going to look like. Another way to regain your sense of power is to gather information. When we're cheated on, we don't have any of the information. And that's an absolute horrible feeling when you find out, because then you're comparing everything that you thought you knew with what you now know. Now, be careful with gathering information. What I'm not talking about here is trying to get every little detail about the affair. I've spoken before about that, and you need to be so careful with that because we tend to think that if we know everything that somehow it's going to alleviate our pain, and it doesn't. And then also once you know those details, you can't scrub them from your mind. So you want to be very careful there. That's not the kind of knowledge that's going to give you too much sense of control. Instead, what I mean is this. Now that you've discovered the infidelity, perhaps divorce is something that is flitting across your mind. Maybe you're not sure. Maybe you're terrified of that and you are determined not to go there. But when we keep something at arm's length, well, it only grows bigger and scarier. So gather information. Even if you don't think that's going to be the path that you're going to take, go ahead and contact an attorney just to find out the information that you need. This is a great time to go ahead and figure out exactly what your financial standing is. Think about those boundaries that you set. If they are crossed, what are you going to do next? Plan all of those things out. Get all of that information. The fewer unknowns that you have right now, the better you're going to feel. One of the ways that we can feel the most powerless is when we're trying to control things that we cannot control. So what I want you to do is make a list. On one side, I want you to write down all of those things that are within your locus of control. And on the other side, I want you to list out all of those things that you cannot control. And it might be good to keep this list handy Because I bet when you're feeling at your worst, you're probably focusing on those things that you can't change. And so work to shift your energy into those things that you can control. Another way that you can start to take back your power is by changing your narrative. The words that we say to others have influence, but those words that we say to ourselves have power. And so often after an affair, we are saying some horrible things to ourselves. Often we paint ourselves as the victim. We say they cheated on me, they were lying to me. And the thing is that the more that you say that, the more you're reinforcing that mindset that you have no power. But now you do. We also have a tendency to say things to ourselves of, I wasn't enough, or I was too much. And you want to be so careful with whatever that is that you're telling yourself, because if you repeat it often enough, you're going to begin to believe it. So one of the ways that you can start to take back your power is by changing the words that you're saying to yourself. You can edit your own narrative. One of the ways that we feel powerless is that we don't see any options that we have. And so one of the things that can be so helpful is to brainstorm all of the possibilities that you do have. Now, this is brainstorming. You don't need to edit yourself. Go crazy with it. It's completely fine. But I just want you to think about, if this happens, I could do all of these different things. Or maybe if this other thing happens, then these are all the opportunities that might open up. Just allow your brain time to explore. We feel powerless when we feel stuck. So by allowing ourselves to explore all of those possibilities, it helps us see that we can move forward. Now, this tip is especially helpful for those of you that are sort of in a limbo state with your partner or trying to work on the relationship. Because what happens in both of those things is that so often they kind of have the reins, because they're the ones who are deciding if the affair continues or not and how much work they are willing to put in. And that can be a really hard place for you to be in. So what I want you to do is make some plans that are not impacted whatsoever by any decisions that your partner makes. Maybe you plan a weekend away with some friends, or you sign up for a course that you've always thought about doing. All of that energy invested into yourself or put into decisions that you are getting to make is really going to help you feel a lot more in control while you're in this difficult place. Another way to reclaim your agency is to make sure that any forgiveness that happens is on your terms. A lot of times we feel pressure, either from the cheater or from the outside world, to forgive them based on some certain timeline. We're told that, in order to heal, you must forgive. And that just makes us feel victimized all over again, because, again, someone else is telling us what we need to do, and nobody's listening to us. That's not how forgiveness works. Forgiveness needs to work when you are ready and in the way that you are ready. And what's so interesting about it is we think of forgiveness as being this thing that we do for the other person. But when we do it on our terms, in our way, it's really a gift that we give ourselves. Another way to find your power is by regaining your voice. During the entirety of the affair, you had no voice. You weren't listened to because you didn't know that there was anything to say. Well, now you know. So what I want you to do is compose a letter, or maybe many letters. And I want you to write all of those things that are inside of you that are just screaming to be heard. Get it out on paper. Now, it's probably best that most of those letters, if not all of them, remain unsent. These aren't words that necessarily need to be shared with another, but once you put them down on paper, it allows you to release them. And then finally, one of the harder things about being cheated on is that we feel powerless in the face of our own emotions, because they hit, and they hit hard, don't they? And that's so scary, isn't it? When you don't know when those triggers are going to hit or when those sobs are going to take you to the ground. And the best way to become at peace with your emotions is to work on mindfulness. Now, this could be meditation, but it doesn't have to be. My personal favorite after divorce was actually doing yoga, because with that, I learned how to breathe through that discomfort. And so it no longer felt so scary. I knew that no matter what was going on around me, I could center myself again. I could find my breath and that I would be okay. And I believe that you will be okay as well.